Ask Yuri. You've got a health and fitness question? I've got an answer.
All right, how's it going, guys? Hope you're having a great day. Today I've got a question from Yakub, who I'm going to put the question up here because it's pretty long. I'm just going to paraphrase it. Essentially what he wants to know is, he wants to know the benefit of alactic training versus anaerobic training in terms of improving speed, power, endurance, and pretty much all markers of performance. And that's a really interesting question because there's a lot of different ways to train, right? And obviously some are more efficient than others. So let's look at this and let's first of all understand what alactic training means. Alactic means without lactate. So it would be easier if I drew this out for you, but I'm not doing that. So I'm going to try to explain it as best as I can. In the spectrum of energy systems, we have the alactate system or the atp-pc system, which is essentially what your body can produce without oxygen and without producing lactic acid. Okay, so that's very, very, very short-term exercise. That's up to, again, it's debatable, up to about 10 seconds. Now, some people say it's a lot less. Basically, it's an area of performance where it's 100% effort, and as a result of that, your body's able to use ATP and the phosphocreatine system without tapping into oxygen and creating lactic acid in order to fuel that activity. So examples would be like sprinting 100 meters or less, so up to 100 meters, jumping, throwing, those immediate actions, kicking, stuff like that, okay? So is that of benefit? Is using that system beneficial for training for running marathons or longer duration events? Because the alternative is anaerobic training or aerobic training. So let's look at anaerobic training. What is anaerobic training? Anaerobic training basically means the duration of activity anywhere from about, usually it's, again, we'll just say 10 seconds, you know, based on where the alactate left off, up to 2 minutes. And that's at a pace where like you're really starting to work. You're not just going for a jog. This is a serious bout of work. And now your muscles need to produce more energy. And they can't do it with the oxygen that they're getting. So what do? They start producing lactic acid in order to get more ATP, which is the basic unit of fuel in the cells. Now, in order for that to happen, as I said, it has to go to a different energy pathway inside your cells called glycolysis. And hopefully this is making sense. Hopefully I'm not getting too technical here. But as a byproduct of that, it produces lactic acid, and that's why you get that burning sensation in your muscles. Now you can only maintain that for a certain length of time before you just say, before your muscles like literally seize up. And if you've ever gotten to the point in any kind of training where you've been like, oh my God, my legs are gonna catch on fire, that's that feeling of lactic acid building up. And that's what's happening is you're working at a pace whereby you can't get enough oxygen to supply what is necessary for the muscles to sustain that activity. So that's anaerobic training. Aerobic training is anything above that, whereby you can sustain the activity with the oxygen coming in, okay? And that's at the point where you're not producing lactic acid in significant amounts. So those are the three different training systems that our body uses to produce energy. So when it comes to, is alactic training efficient or a better way of training than anaerobic and aerobic? The answer is really, it depends. And this is where there's a really, I think there's a lot of room for continued research, because there's a lot of research that shows that high intensity anaerobic like training is beneficial for improving endurance and performance. There's research showing that a very, very short duration, high intensity activity, so for instance, alactic type training, is beneficial as well. Let me give you some food for thought here. So if you're a runner, let's just assume you're a runner, for instance, and you want to train for a marathon. You can go out and you can pound the pavement for several miles every single day, and you can break your body down. You can do that, right? You can stay in your aerobic zone, right? That aerobic energy system, but you have to go for a long duration to get some kind of benefit from that. So typically most runners go out and they spend an hour, 2 hours, several hundred miles a week if they want to, if they're training for a marathon. That's one way of doing it. I believe as we move forward, we're going to see less and less of that type of training, at least in a population of people who start to understand this stuff. Because when you do that amount of running, it's only a matter of time before your body breaks down. It's like driving a car 500,000 miles. Right? Eventually it's going to wear and tear. Now, alactic training is interesting because you can do intervals in preparation for a marathon. But again, remember this, it's all about specificity. So you really have to use a combination of these different training modalities for best results. That's my personal feeling. Alactic training, let's say that instead of going out and doing a 20-mile run, you did an hour, and which is still quite a long time. Let's say you did an hour worth of alactic intervals. And those intervals would be of the following nature. So you go 5 seconds, full out sprints, okay? And then you recover for, let's say, 20 or 25 seconds. So that bout of back and forth, up and down, is 30 seconds. Let's just say that. So it's 30 seconds full out sprint, 25 seconds recovery. That's a 30-second chunk. And you continue repeating that for 1 hour. So it's a 5-second full out sprint, 30 seconds recovery, or 25 seconds recovery. And you just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, doing that as you're going for your run, wherever you're going for your run. Now that's why I developed the treadmill trainer workouts, because you don't have to worry about looking at the time. I tell you when to do all that. So that's one of the reasons why I'd recommend you grab the treadmill trainer workouts over at mytreadmilltrainer.com. Anyways, back to our little scenario here. What's really interesting is that there's been a number of studies that have shown the benefit of doing this, again, high intensity type stuff on a lot of different markers of health: diabetes, obesity, belly fat specifically, VO2 max, anaerobic thresholds, which is interesting as well. So, and here's why this is still considered, it's alactic training, but it's also considered aerobic training because you're not getting into lactic acid production. So you're doing a 5-second full out sprint, 25-second jog, 5-second full out sprint, 25-second jog. If you do that over an hour, what you're gonna have happen is your heart rate is slowly but surely gonna climb. So you should be in the aerobic zone the whole time, but those bouts of high intensity are short enough where they're not producing lactic acid. And that has a lot of benefits actually, because now you're training your body to work at a higher or spend more time at a higher percentage of its maximum intensity. If you take 5 seconds within an hour, whatever amount of duration or mileage you're doing, those 5-second intervals, they add up. So it's 5, 10, 15, 20. Over an hour, maybe you're spending 4 or 5 minutes at a full out intensity. That's very beneficial for enzymes within your cells, for all the muscle fibers and stuff that are involved in the different intensities. So it's tough to really answer the question with yes, it's the best, or no, it's not. I just wanted to give you an analogy here of a way you can incorporate it, because I believe that it's not one thing is the only way to do things. When I was training soccer players, we would use this type of alactic training quite a bit. We'd also use some anaerobic conditioning. We use some longer duration stuff for recovery. So you really have to play around with stuff, and really you have to understand what you are training for. You have to look at the demands of your sport, of your activity, and mimic your training as close as possible to those situations. All right, so Jakub, hopefully that answers your question, and at the very minimum, it's giving you a good understanding of how our bodies work physiologically in terms of producing energy. And again, this goes into a lot more detail, but I've just kind of skimmed the surface there, and hopefully that helps you out. So there we go. Again, if you've got any more questions or feedback or anything else, you just want to say, hey Yuri, what's up? Join me on Facebook. The link is right here, and I'm on there every day posting awesome stuff to inspire you to stay fit and healthy and live your best life ever. Until then, I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.